So while you're running the column, make sure that at least one partner is always keeping an eye on the level of the solvent here. We always want to keep topping it up with hexane for the start. Once we get the first fraction through the column, we're going to be switching to a mixture of hexane and ether. But until then, just make sure you keep topping it up with hexane, and we're going to elute the column down. Now, you know that your first fraction is out once this yellow band meets the sand at the bottom here. So we want to collect the first component, which is the fluorine, and that's because it's nonpolar, or closer to nonpolar than the fluorinone, and so it actually likes to interact with the hexane more than it interacts with the silica gel, and so it's going to pass through the column much faster than the fluorinone. So that's going to elute first, and you're going to collect that in a clean beaker. So have another beaker spare to collect your first fraction. We're going to bring this down, and we can just stop it as soon as the yellow band gets above the sand. So since we don't want the fluorine mixture that was sitting on the sand to mix with all the hexane we're adding in, I added a little bit of hexane, and now I'm bringing that down. And as it's approaching the sand, I'm going to add a little bit more. And you can see already that the solution at the top is no longer yellow. So that means that we have mostly hexane up here and we don't have any of the mixture left. So at that point, that's when you can add hexane up to the top. So now that we've begun to actually elute the column, I've switched to a clean beaker, and this is going to collect the fluorine. And you know from your manual that approximately 50 mils of solution will have to pass through in order to get the yellow band down to the bottom. And so that will be our first fraction. We want to collect as much as we can, and once this yellow band gets to the bottom, and this isn't written in your lab manual, so you'll want to pay attention, you actually want to grab another beaker to collect the amount in between the two components, because there might be some mixing in between the two. So we're going to clear that out to ensure that the second compound we're collecting is pure. You can see here at the bottom that the yellow is starting to approach. So that's the fluorinone coming through the column. And we've collected about 40 mils of solution at this point. So that's our first fraction, and that should be pure fluorine. And so what we're going to do at this point is switch over to our chase beaker. So that's kind of our disposal beaker. So just to ensure that we're getting pure compounds out, we're going to take the in-between and have that as a new beaker. So make sure when you take your pure compound out, you want to label this. You also need to take it and put it on the steam bath, because we're going to concentrate that down so that when we run our TLC plate, it's more concentrated and you won't just get a solvent spot. So you want to concentrate this down probably to about 15 mils of solution. I think I have one here. So this is what you're going to get after you've put it on the steam bath for a while. So you can see there that's maybe 10 to 15 mils left. And you can see that it's very concentrated because some of the compound is starting to solidify on the walls of the beaker. So you know this is concentrated enough to do your TLC with. And so now that we have our chase beaker in place, whenever you're running, you want to make sure that the tip of your burette is below the top of your beaker. So since I switched to a smaller beaker, I need to bring the burette down. So now that we have our chase beaker in place, we're going to collect a fraction of mixture just to ensure that our second component is going to be pure. And we're going to be taking the solvent and actually changing the polarity of it gradually. So instead of switching to the 1-to-1 ratio of hexane and ether, which is written in your lab manual, we're actually going to do that gradually. So first we're going to put a portion that is mostly hexane with a little bit of ether, and then we're going to step it closer and closer to the 1-to-1 ratio. And that's going to allow the fluoronone to elute through the column slowly, or slower than if you had just switched straight to ether. So here I'm just going to open it up so that we can collect our mixture component, and using pipettes, I have a beaker of hexane and some ether. So to start, I'm going to add about 4 pipettes of hexane, and then we're going to add a little bit of ether in there, probably about 1 pipette, maybe 2 pipettes. And we just want that solvent to mix in there. And when that's going through, because the fluoronone is more soluble or interacts more with the ether, it's going to be allowed to come through the column. So it's preferring the ether over the silica gel. As the solvent is approaching the sand layer, I'm going to get ready to add my next portion. And this one, instead of a 4-to-1 ratio, I'm going to use a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 pipettes of hexane. And then 1 pipette of ether. Ooh. And remember that ether is very volatile and likes to squirt out, so if we bring it up and then add it, we won't have that problem. And you can see now that the polarity of our solvent is changed and we have more ether in there, the top of the band is actually moving down now. So you can see that most of our fluoronone is actually in this area. So we're going to keep collecting our chase until we get the bright yellow down to the bottom of the burette. And of course, this doesn't have to be precise. This is just a way to gradually change over to that 1-to-1 hexane and ether mix. So that's 2 pipettes of hexane. Then we have our 1 pipette of ether. And now I'm just going to move that back down so that we can continue collecting our chase. Now that we've added a portion that is 2 parts hexane and 1 part ether, the next step would be that 1-to-1 ratio. So we could actually mix up a bunch of it in a graduated cylinder, probably about 40 to 50 mils. So you can make up your half and half hexane and ether mixture now. So now we have our 1-to-1 mixture, and we're going to keep topping up the column here. So now we can see that the yellow band has made it all the way down to the sand layer. And if you watch the droplets coming out, you can see when we start to get some yellow. So when the droplets coming off the tip actually look yellow, that's when you're going to switch to the beaker for your fluoronone fraction, and that way we'll make sure that it's pure. So now I've switched out the beaker, so we have our clean beaker collecting the fluoronone fraction, and we're just going to run the column out until we have all the yellow band through the bottom.